So we're going to go on our next panel, which I've named Compliance in the Age of Overregulation. And what I mean by compliance is marketing compliance, because this has been a real challenge in the sector since even before legalization in October, but even became more challenging after that. So I want to welcome to the stage Megan Henderson from HelloMD, and we'll talk about everything she knows. Henry Aware from WeedMap, and Rebecca Brown from Crown Agency. Oh.
I'm good.
Yeah. It should be. Yeah, just flip it up. Well, welcome all, and welcome back, Megan. Megan, can we start with you?
Me?
Yes,
sure.
you.
If people aren't sick of me, sure.
First of all, this
I like that
sweatshirt
hoodie on you, Jay.
is
People
booming.
stick around for the cocktail hour because you could win one of these hoodies, and it is the softest, gentlest hoodie. It's like a warm hug.
I just took a mini nap in it.
It's like a warm cannabis hug. That's what I call those hoodies.
Oh, I like the warm cannabis hug. We'll be getting the warm cannabis hugs as soon as edibles come online in December and January. So Megan, can we start with you?
Sure.
Because you were on a panel earlier talking about patient, right, easing the pain. And you come from a very interesting background that provides you a unique perspective on this specific issue. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So anybody who doesn't know me, before joining HelloMD, I helped to launch and ran a website called thegrowthop.com, which is Postmedia's cannabis editorial website. And as part of that role, or in conjunction with that role, I worked with the sales and legal teams at Postmedia to develop their compliance guidelines and acted as the sort of compliance gatekeeper for all cannabis ads that ran on the Postmedia network for like just over a year, about a year and a half, and only just recently left there in June. So spent a lot of time really living in the regulations.
Yeah, and they don't have soft hoodies there.
They do not have soft.
It's like rough hoodies.
No soft hoodies at Postmedia.
So that's great background, and thank you, because we'll come back to that. Rebecca Brown, you are writing the playbook on cannabis marketing. See what I did there?
Yes, I did.
That's actually her tagline. Talk a little bit about sort of what you do at Crowns and how you're finding the landscape in this highly regulated environment.
Thanks, Jay.
Yeah.
I will talk about that.
Yes, please.
So Crowns is sort of somewhere in between an advertising agency and a management consulting firm. So we work with cannabis clients exclusively across the value chain, all over the world, all different shapes and sizes, with anything related to how you reach your buyer, whether that's it's B2C or B2B, and that inclusive of brand building, media buying, PR, campaigning, all of that stuff. So we have to be very close to the regulation and whatever the, understanding du jour of the regulations are. I also sit on the Canadian Marketing Association's working group for cannabis, which has been exceptionally useful, and that working group does talk regularly to Health Canada about promotional regulation.
Great. We're going to get back to that too.
Okay.
Henry, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Talk a little bit about what WeedMap is, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, so WeedMap is essentially a hybrid between Leafly and WeedMaps. And what we're trying to do is give legal producers an advantage over the black market. So what it does is for retailers, you can advertise your products on there, and it's only for legal retailers. And also, what we want to do is we just don't want to focus on consumption. We want to focus on educational materials, health materials. And as time progresses, we see how the market evolves. We've only been live for 1 month, so we're pretty new, and we're just trying to figure out the space to go. But I think WeedMap essentially is to advertise your products, educational materials, and as time goes on, we will evolve to sort of give the market what it wants.
I have it on my phone. So
Good.
You got me in the past month, so thank you. Rebecca, I want to focus on you, because a lot of what I heard, it's really incorporating digital and how people actually find information about brands, right? And in this world of compliance, what is compliant on that front? Broad strokes.
Well, Jay, as you know,
I know nothing.
There isn't like a clear and definitive answer to that question. The Cannabis Act tells us that we can promote through telecommunications so long as we take reasonable steps to ensure that a young person will not be exposed. And so then the question becomes, what is a reasonable step? Is, for example, using ad tech that only delivers advertising to people who are 19 plus or 21 plus a reasonable step? Thus far, we're seeing many license holders use ad tech and use digital targeting. And thus far, there has not been any pushback from Health Canada on that. But I think that the reality is that what you must do if you are promoting, advertising, or marketing cannabis is you need to make sure that you have a very solid compliance argument that you can make to a regulator should they pick up the phone and say, hey, I feel like this is offside. So for Crowns, we like there to be more than one reasonable step. Like, we like to be able to, should a regulator call, we like to be able to say, here are 2 reasonable steps that we took, and here is a massive amount of documentation that supports our argument that we took these reasonable steps.
Never before have marketing people and lawyers worked closer hand in hand, I believe.
That's a really good point, and I like an observation as someone who sees sort of the guts of many different cannabis companies. The companies that have where the legal team and the marketing team work closely together and have sort of a shared vision and understanding, so where it's not like, no, you can't, yes, we want to, I think that is a critical piece of success from an operational perspective.
I would 100% agree with that. Like, the number one thing you should do is make friends with your lawyers. You know, if you're going to be doing compliance like every other day, you guys need to be on the same page. If you're not on the same page, it's hard enough, you know, working with clients and everyone to get their compliant marketing material through the door. If you're fighting internally and externally on those fronts, it's too many fronts to be fighting on. Yeah, you need to be on the same page with your lawyers, 100%.
Building on that, something that we recommend and that we do for our clients as part of our onboarding is we create documentation in partnership with the marketing team and the legal team that represents like what that company feels comfortable with from a reasonable steps perspective, which means that the marketing team and the agencies who you're hiring and paying money to aren't burning many hours coming up with ideas that you will never put into market because your legal team will shut them down.
Yeah. It's interesting, sort of a personal hero of ours at Business of Cannabis is Ruth Chun.
Me too.
From Up Cannabis, and she's made the argument in other people's law firms that every company should have an in-house counsel, because an in-house counsel's job is to figure out what you can do, and outside counsel is to figure out what you cannot do.
It's such a good point, and I think you we work with.
That's not a quote of
we
Ruth.
work with
That's
Up,
me paraphrasing Ruth.
And that I think that is actually a very key difference in how that company operates. That Ruth really, her job really is, although I don't think she's there anymore, but her job really is to help them figure out how to put in market what they wish to put in market in a way that's defensible.
And Henry, thinking about this, I mean, are there advantages to creating sort of your own ecosystem in an app that it's just compliant by nature? Like, is that a helpful? I mean, that's obviously helpful for brands, but is that part of the thinking of WeedMap?
Absolutely, right? We want to be able to create an ecosystem that sort of allows individuals to come on with a preset age already on the app. And I think that was a very key component for Apple. We had a very difficult time going through the Apple store because they wanted that measure included in it to have a preset age so not anybody could go download it. So I think that's a very important. And I think just to add to what my colleagues are saying, I think it's very true right now with the Cannabis Act. It's very difficult. You don't know how to promote your advertisement. You don't know what to put, right? And it's important to be able to sort of work with legislators to speak to them. That's what we've been doing as a company. So I'm a policy advisor, so I've been working with some of the legislators to sort of advocate on behalf of the industry why certain advertisement promotion restrictions to be eased. Because the key public policy objective of the government is to limit the access to youth. And the way that they've done it right now is not going to achieve that because the black market has been there for 100 years. So legal markets are competing with that. So they have to be able to give us an advantage to be able to compete with the illegal market.
Yeah, thank you. Megan, I want to flip it a little bit. Earlier today, we had Ken Hunt from Toronto, a publisher of Toronto Life, talk about a new publication they're putting out that is a compliant way for them to put out a magazine, therefore actually have a compliant way to put advertising. You come from Post Media, or you did come from Post Media. Now you're with the comfy hoodie people. But talk about, so I want to flip it a little bit because there were clearly digital ways to create compliant frameworks. If there are compliant ways to create digital frameworks within sort of Post Media, there are compliant ways to do it across any website. What is the how can more digital publications or more digital assets be pushing internally to do this, to accept cannabis marketing material, whatever it is?
Well, I mean, I think there's sort of a couple different layers to this, right? Because it's not just about whether or not you can facilitate that, it's whether you want to. And as we've seen in the last year, not everybody wants to, right? So my background isn't just Post Media. I was at Rogers, I was at Transcontinental, so I've had a long history within publishing and both print and digital. You know, Rogers, for instance, up until recently when they sold their print publications and those brands to St. Joseph's and Ken's team, they were not accepting cannabis advertising. Now that's something that I know Ken's team is changing, which is really good. When someone like Rogers doesn't want to go into accepting cannabis advertising, that's unfair for all of us. It wasn't because of a compliance issue. My understanding was it was a reputational issue. So someone like Rogers, there's a lot more revenue coming in from their wireless and cable consumers than they do from their publishing. Their publishing is like this big for them. So for them, it was a risk they weren't willing to take reputationally because they do not want to alienate any of those other customers, right? So that's number one is, do you even want to accept it, right? And there are still quite a few, Google, Facebook, for instance, they are not adjusting their policies to make exceptions for Canada. It is a global policy and they are basing it mostly off of the US. So, that's a real, I think that's a mistake on their part. And we'll see how long that continues, especially given things like the Safe Banking Act is moving along. So, again, I think we'll see some progress with those things. So I think it's, do I want to? Then can I technology-wise facilitate it? If it's a print and it's a subscriber list, that's a different story. It's a lot easier to facilitate it, and Toronto Life is a great example of that. I would say, though, that just because it's a subscriber magazine does not necessarily mean it's compliant, because there's two factors with that print. You've got to have a named individual, and you have to be able to take reasonable steps to prove that that person is over the age of majority in the province, right? So do we all fill out when we get a magazine subscription how old we are? Not necessarily. So in that case, the premise is that if I'm paying for my subscription with a credit card, I'm likely over 18 if I got a credit card in my name, right? So that's sort of why that becomes compliant. It's not always necessarily true. And then for the technology side, with Post Media specifically, it was really about, we didn't want to stop people from getting their news, right? So, when you're the growth op and you're cannabis focused, people are used to coming to a website and getting an age gate. They don't like it. In fact, we got a lot of hate mail for the age gate, but they deal with it. But when you're going to the National Post and you want to read a news story on cannabis, you do not expect an age gate and you don't want it. So you don't want to alienate that reader. So the team there developed essentially a targeting mechanism using cookies or whatever to basically say, yes, I'm over 18. Okay, then I'm only targeting that reader on the National Post or the Vancouver Sun with a cannabis ad because they have already raised their hand and told me that they're over age. Is that the most compliant assurance? No. But until Health Canada specifically defines what a compliant age gate is, we're all just making guesses.
I'm gonna flip this again. I think that I think it's awesome that that Toronto Life's coming out with a cannabis publication. I think that's great. I don't think that there's the addition of a new publication or the opening up of an incremental channel is going to make any transformational difference to our ability or to a license holder's ability to really get penetration of their brand, at scale. So I think that what I think license holders who want to, which is all of them, who want to make their brands into a household name need to be thinking about is not, what's my one-off placement, but what is the ecosystem that I can light up and keep in place in an always-on way, not like once per quarter for a week, and that's when you're going to start to see the needle shift. I think it has to be about consistent, day-over-day communication with your key target in a disciplined way, and learning inside of constraints and inside of an ecosystem that is handicapped and in some ways what works and what doesn't. And I think the license holders who are pursuing that path are making headway, and the ones who aren't.
We have a few more minutes to finish up. I want to think about not Canada, but think about what you've seen out there in the landscape. So think about California, Colorado, other places. What could we be learning from them to say this would change if we change this one reg or two regs, like we could either use technology or not, like we could actually change things dramatically to get better access to people, to educate them better, to build brand more easily? Henry?
Well, I think I think that's a good example. The one thing we can change is change the regulatory system, because honestly,
wipe out the whole thing.
Yeah, because if you see the California companies, they're allowed to sign Snoop Dogg, their Jay-Z just got signed. So they're preparing themselves for a global fight, right? As Canadian companies, we should have the advantage right now. However, with the regulatory system being so restrictive, once the United States legalize weed, we're going to be at disadvantage because their market is so much bigger. So I think, one, if Canadian companies understand the public policy objective the government is trying to achieve, we can sort of come together and to sort of create advertisement to direct at the target market. I think one of them would be to sort of market in a way that you're not trying to attract non-consumers already. Because that's one of the key things. The government doesn't want companies to attract new consumers. So I think that'd be a great way to look at it. And also, I think, just like I said, just take the US for example. Like the US market is getting ready to sort of explode, and here we are being constrained by these regulatory policies. So I think if we're able to sort of come together as a group and sort of advocate as ones, I think we'll be able to sort of make headways. Yep.
I have very strong feelings about this question.
About the question or about your answer?
I'm going to jump in and so, I mean, having now, I'm also working on U.S. marketing for the team as well, and so I'm starting to get, and even before that I had started to try and understand, especially the 11 legal states and the District of Columbia, what their advertising rules were and everything like that. But, like the states has lots of problems too, and every state is different,
like
and they all
president.
have a different mix. Like, I don't know that I would necessarily look at them and think, oh, they're doing this great or they're doing this great. But what I would say is that we have to stop treating this like it's smoking and start treating it like it's more like alcohol, because that is a more comparable association, and we should be given the same opportunities to market the way Budweiser does and Coors does and all those. If I can watch them on the Super Bowl and I can see a hockey player with like Coors or whatever on their jersey, then I should be able to see a cannabis company there as well, because I'm not a child, right. And if I can go buy a non-child resistant bottle of whiskey, why do I have to spend 10 minutes opening a cannabis jar? I don't understand that. So to me, it's about Canada writing the regulations so that they make sense for an adult who is going to make a choice about whether it's the recreational or medical choices they are going to make, and being properly informed. And right now, cannabis cannot properly inform their consumer on how to safely use their product, and that is an issue, I think.
Also, right outside of this building is a beer brand's
which
water.
I enjoy.
Oh no, it's great, but just think of the difference. There is a water tower that says Steam Whistle. It's right there, but we have to hush ourselves and lock the door and have a 19+ sign to come in and talk about cannabis inside of a brewery.
I think that cannabis marketing in Canada and in the U.S. is retail marketing. The choice is being made at shelf. So I think if I could make one wish for Canada, it would be that we get loosen the restrictions around what can and can't happen inside a store. We know that these are adults. We know that they've come there to purchase cannabis. So once they're there, it'd be really great if we could give them better information about how to consume, how one product is different from another, and I think that would be great. That would be great, and I think it would be responsible against the policy objectives of the Cannabis Act.
Well, and I think, Rebecca and I have talked about this before, and anybody who's worked in another regulated industry in Canada has used the Advertising Standards Council to ensure compliance on their pharma ads or natural healthcare products, because that's what they're there for. And you pay a fee, and they review your ad and say, yes, you're compliant, or here are the issues. And Health Canada has said that they're not ready to employ that mechanism. And I also think that is something that needs to be corrected, because there is a tool out there. There is a way for companies to stay compliant, to work within the guidelines, and to not expending all this time spinning their wheels trying to figure it out. And we're not utilizing that mechanism. And I don't understand why. That to me seems like a waste.
But it's making lawyers extremely happy.
It is.
You never go wrong making fun of lawyers. I want to thank Henry and Rebecca and Megan. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your insight. And we appreciate it. Thank you very much.